Yabba-lubba-dub-dub, my fellow squanches, and happy Thursday?
Have you been drinking? On a Thursday? He seems ideal.
I love Spaghetti Thursdays!
Oh my god, Rick!
There goes my Thursday.
Another season of Rick and Morty has come and gone, and what a season it was. From Suicide Spaghetti to confronting Rick Prime, Season 7 took a bold new direction for this post-Roiland era, and I am absolutely on board and excited for whatever comes next. If you missed the season's run on the air, have no fear. All the new episodes are set to drop on Max this Monday, which means now is the perfect time to revisit the season and rank every episode from the worst to the best. If you were following along with my weekly episode reviews, you should have a pretty good idea of where I stand on these episodes already. However, there will be some shifting as I account for rewatchability and just my overall taste and preferences after letting these episodes sit for a while. Season 7 was an absolute banger of a season with very few misses, and it executed its objectives very well in my opinion, and because of that, I expect everyone's rankings to be different, so please share them in the comments below with as much or as little detail as you'd like. My only request is you be polite to others, and to me if you're feeling generous. But enough chit chat, let's kick things off at the bottom with number 10. And so starting things off, I have what might be the only decisive placement in terms of the overall consensus, Episode 8, Rise of the Numericons, the movie. And like I said in my review, I can commend the show's attempt at trying something different like this. Season 7 was certainly an experimental season for tons of reasons I'll touch on throughout this ranking, and this is no exception. This episode continues the season's trend of a lack of B-plots with a single linear story. It pays homage to past seasons and continues the canon continuity, even if it does merely piggyback off a Season 2 tag. And it toys with a new sense of humor, relying on mathematical and linguistic puns to remain consistent with the episode's material, as well as utilizing guest stars for some pop culture references.
Hey, Ice-T, it's me, Morty. Remember me? Get Swifty? No.
However, I personally cannot say that it paid off, and from what I've seen within the community, most fans agree.
Well, that's unfortunate.
Because this episode is also the first and only episode within the show to be completely devoid of Rick. Now, if they had leaned more heavily into Morty's part of the story and or increased his involvement, I might have less to nitpick, but giving us a Goldenfold / Ice-T episode was just not on my bucket list.
Yo, Chuck, it's Marvin. Your cousin Marvin D. Hey, you know that new sound you're looking for? Well, listen to this.
Like I said, I can applaud the showrunners for taking an experimental leap of faith, and I can even see why some might have really enjoyed this one. But for me personally, this just didn't do it for me. It doesn't come close to the rest from this season. And so moving on to number 9, with a huge step up, I have Episode 3, Air Force Wong. Now, upon my first couple of watches within the week of this episode's release, I honestly didn't really get what they were going for. And I was very upfront about that in my review. However, after another more recent rewatch, my enjoyment for this one greatly increased, but still not enough to claim a higher spot on this list. This whole episode is about trust versus mistrust and separation versus connection. It shows us how Unity has been looking out for Rick out of love and kinship, but she had to regain Rick's trust within this episode to get that message across. And in the end, it was Rick who lost her trust. For Rick, every relationship is a tool, which is why he doesn't want Dr. Wong and the President connecting. He wants to keep as many lives as separate as possible. However, it's this toxic mindset that gets in his way a lot of the time, even if he might be right, because he loses the trust of his more simple-minded friends, and in the end, loses those connections himself.
I need Unity's help, so you need to convince her I'm worth it.
You aren't.
So lie.
I think you're wrong.
Bringing you was a mistake.
Dude, lie. Lie for longer.
This episode shows him what true friendship is and forces him to grapple with the consequences of getting in his own way. Like I said, Unity was actually looking out for him and his best interests, and even though I agree with his stance on her dumping him, so why would he accept her calls, it's clear that Unity still cares for him and wants to be friends.
Give me a call. Look, I get it. I dumped you. You're ignoring me. But I care about you, and I just want to know you're all right.
I also like how the episode indulges us with more of that classic nothing matters theme within the show. They use Unity's character to portray how a wholehearted connection can lead to great things like peace and prosperity for all of Virginia, but also remind us that when everyone is of one mind, well, then nothing truly matters.
You can say that again.
What is peace without violence? What is prosperity without suffering? What are decisions without consequences? You can't just take the good in life without the bad, otherwise that means you're already dead and in heaven, or some form of simulation.
How dumb are you? You're inside a simulation of a simulation inside another giant simulation.
All in all, this episode cuts deep in more ways than one, but I still don't think it all comes together in a standout episode for the season. The narrative is still relatively weak, and the humor leaves a lot to be desired, as does Unity's cameo. I love Rick and President Curtis episodes, and this one certainly has some fun gags tossed in there.
And hungry.
You can't date my shrink.
What? Bro, you're nuts.
And don't date my shrink.
Call on the chopper. I'm being cock-blocked.
But this is still probably my least favorite of the bunch. Next up, taking the number 8 spot is the season premiere, How Poopy Got His Poop Back. This was certainly a fun episode that I still find highly rewatchable. It has a ton of great gags, even though a lot of them rely on pop culture references, and more than normal for the show, with Hugh Jackman, Predator, and a whole parody scene for Stand By Me.
Bird person went home to take on a challenge way more difficult than a predator, raising bird daughter. Gearhead went back to the gear system and got a spinal replacement. He's still paying it off.
At the end of the day, it's a getting the boys back together episode with some of our favorite side characters, while still providing an emotional story for PB that continues his canonical adventures within the show.
I know, it tore you up inside, like a bullet.
It was an accident!
Anyway, then I got fired from my job, my wife left me, broke both my legs, failed the bar exam.
There are some tough themes at play in here, such as emotional abandonment, keeping people emotionally hostage, and coming to terms with grief, mistakes, and regret. It makes for a super depressing PB episode, but it's still highly in line with the show's darker themes. Plus, it's never too heavy-handed, it's more subtly infused in a lighthearted episode.
You don't have to do this, Sheriff. It's your last day on the job.
That's exactly why I must.
Well, what happened?
I think it ran out of gas.
So he could have survived if he just stood back 5 feet.
Well, let's not tell his granddaughter that.
However, what holds this one back for me is the fact that this was our season opener. I've warmed up to that fact, as after watching the whole season, I'm not entirely sure where it would have worked better while keeping the story the same. But still, it just doesn't quite work as a season premiere, in my opinion. On first watch, it didn't feel like the season was coming out swinging for the fences, and on rewatches, I still can't escape the fact that this feels more like an episode from American Dad or Family Guy.
And maybe he learned something about himself.
Oh, here, I forgot to give you a fading pill. Great for hangovers. Just to clarify, I had to take an unfading pill to counteract the original fading pill I just took.
Oh, okay.
And if you're hung up on why the taxi disappeared, the pills aren't sentient, but they do detect human coverings, so it saw the taxi as some sort of large overcoat. Doesn't matter.
It's a simple and fun episode, but compared to a stacked season, it just doesn't stand up as strong. And so, coming in at number 7 is Episode 2, The Jarek Trap. Compared to the season opener, I thought this episode was much more intelligently written and craftily put together. The gags are witty, the dialogue is snappy, and overall the episode is just more in line with what I expect from the show.
The brain is part of the body, Jerry. It's hardware. I'm gonna put my mind in your brain, and your mind in my brain.
Oh, God.
Wait, no!
On rewatch, I don't think the themes are quite as deep as they were the first time around for me. The episode is actually quite simple, relying on the main idea of body swapping and yet another instance of body fusing horror from the show. There are some cool ideas toyed with, like Rick and Jerry having to learn to coexist as their brains are shuffled into their own versions of twins, with both sets of their toxic traits on full display. But at the end of the day, it was a very simple and straightforward episode.
What a turn. Lucky I'm such a genius, your garage can thwart death.
I'm the genius, and it's your garage, idiot. Hey, what the f did you do to my body?
Your body, Jerry, your mind did that to my body using my brain.
Jerry, my mind was in this brain in your body. Pretty easy to follow.
Now that said, there's nothing wrong with simple and straightforward. I still found this episode to be solidly executed, and it also comes equipped with some fun sci-fi action, as well as memorable meta jokes.
What's the problem, kid? Conad got your tongue?
Chuxley, you're alive!
Did this guy always have a hole, or is that a big reveal?
Lastly, I thought Chuxley was one of the better antagonists introduced within this season. He was a great character with more depth than meets the eye. I was sad to see him go, but grateful to have gotten him.
How old is this?
My milkshake is empty!
Okay.
But coming in just above it at number 6 is the other body-fusing episode from this season, Wet Quat A Mortican Summer, episode 7. These last two were neck and neck for me and pretty much a last-minute decision on placement, but overall I found Wet Quat came together just a tad better for me in the end. For one, I really enjoyed the dynamic of Rick having to get his groove back after taking down his lifelong enemy and not really knowing what to do with himself.
It's my emotional cheat day. I am removing myself from this conversation.
You heard him, boys? Kill him before he gets his groove!
And while I was very hesitant in the beginning when Summer went into a Quado-filled party scene, I was fully invested once it became a full-on parody of Taken with a smidge of Total Recall and a pinch of Stranger Things tossed in there.
Hey, why do you get to kick down all the doors? I want to kick one. Oh, shit! It's locked! My ankle!
What is this? Your first Taken? Hello? Morty?
Summer!
Thematically speaking, I thought it was an awesome episode revolving around the difference of philosophies and ways of life between Summer and Morty, with Summer always having been a character who's earned her keep, while Morty is a bottom feeder, a living parasite.
Can't believe he gave you that! I've asked for one forever!
Because you're a bottom feeder, Morty. You beg and eat scraps. I'm an independent woman who eats what she killed.
Pitting them together in an episode like this, getting them muddled up with an obscure reference to Total Recall, I thought was hilarious and right up Rick and Morty's alley. And while it stays true to this season's updated sense of humor, relying on more pop culture references and dragging out scenes Family Guy style, it still came with more than enough crass and intelligent jokes alike, remaining faithful to the show's identity at the end of the day.
Whoa, he's got a knife!
Not just any knife.
Quado knife!
You gotta jiggle it more.
Obviously, I'm jiggling it, Summer.
Not hard enough.
Morty says not hard enough.
I'm alive! I'm alive! Wait, I have so much more to reveal!
Honestly, this episode kind of has it all for Rick and Morty fans. Wacky spoof of famous pop culture properties, raunchy topics and ideas as well as deep thematic elements, fun and silly humor coupled with cleverly crafted jokes, and even some more laid-back scenes with nice moments between family members.
Man, kind of a shame. That spider thing was pretty cool.
Yeah, I wanted it.
Morty says he wanted it.
Oh, okay, here.
It might be a hot take to put this one here, and I certainly understand if others enjoyed the season premiere or Jarek Trap more, but again, this one just really resonated with me on first watch and hasn't lost any of its impact on rewatches. With every episode lacking B-plots, it all comes down to these A-plot stories, and for me, summer episodes are always a treat, and this one was no different. Her pig-headedness and independence remains intact throughout this episode and comes with a very memorable exchange between her and Rick, earning it a spot here on my list.
Morty gets everything for free!
Morty's a dog! People have cats because their affection is earned. I treat you like an equal because I respect you. Remind me of your grandmother.
But kicking off my top 5 is going to be this season's anthology episode, Rick Fending Your Mort. Being this season's meta episode, and a clip show at that, this one comes equipped with some very fun and hilarious gags, as well as continuing the season's desire to reference previous seasons and lean on that connectivity within the show.
Your Honor, if everyone here has truly seen everything, then you all know my grandson and I did this whole thing with giants.
Did what whole thing?
I will address that.
This is an open and shut case, Morty. You know, what do you think is gonna happen? Some magical angel's gonna show up and...
Fee, fi, fo, fum. I smell the violation of civil liberties.
It's a very fun episode, and a welcomed lighter one after the huge canon event of confronting Rick Prime. But it also digs quite deep, exploring the concept of judgment, and more specifically, proposing the question of who has the right to cast blame or issue judgment in the first place. Who in reality is a good enough person to judge others? This episode touches on morality in a subtle way while remaining a mostly light and fun episode with tons of meta and canon clips between our favorite duo. And it also gives us more of the Smith family, who were shockingly absent this season in general.
This is our target, Dichotomous Daniel.
That was my chair.
I'm sorry! I can't stop once I start! Whatever. Everyone knows I'm embarrassing. I'm bulletproof.
But taking my number 4 spot is going to be episode 9, Mort Ragnarok. Of all the episodes from this season, I felt like this one is the most classic Rick and Morty adventure, focusing on big sci-fi concepts, hilarious jokes, and the classic good versus evil trope.
You will work for me.
I like that the Pope is just such a generic villain. I like that he's just a vaguely European guy that just wants all the power. You're already the Pope, so you know why he wants power. You don't get into the Pope business by not wanting power. Sorry.
It not only continues all the season 7 trends, but it fully leans into them and embraces them. Of course, like every other episode, there's no B-plot, but more than that, the jokes follow this season's new sense of humor with more pop culture references and extended gags, and it pays tribute to plot details from earlier episodes such as with Bigfoot and Predator.
You suck!
Danger!
Wow, that's great, buddy. It's going right on the fridge.
Oh, wait, a musket?
I'm starting to think it's like their currency.
I traded a Predator 3 muskets for it. So it is their currency.
Now, the plot itself is simple enough and comes with a few holes in its logic, but it's dumb fun, and sometimes that's just what you need, and it's something the show excels at.
Was it the Pope?
Shit if I know.
Let me check. This guy, apparently.
Thematically, this episode isn't a powerhouse of any sort, but even then it has fun with the central topic of power, showing us how those with more power oppress and manipulate those with less. From Rick laying siege on Valhallan Vikings,
do we even need to attack him?
To a juiced up Pope killing Rick, Morty, and Bigfoot repeatedly back at the Vatican. The episode even puts a heavy focus on Pokemon to really emphasize this main theme, an infamous franchise where those with the more powerful stats often have the upper hand in battle.
Alright, I'm just gonna say it so nobody else has to say it. Pokeball.
This one is probably the funniest of the season, and easily the one I've rewatched the most. What can I say? I'm a sucker for Vikings and Norse mythology, as well as the sillier aspects of Rick and Morty, which this episode definitely leans into. So I'm not surprised at all that this one resonated with me more than others. But even still, I think the top 3 are the best of what Season 7 had to offer, and so kicking off my top 3 is none other than Suicide Spaghetti. That's right, Episode 4, That's a Morty. This is easily the darkest and hardest to stomach episode from the season, as it touches on gruesome themes such as suicide, cannibalism, and the current food industry, but also deep thinkers like blissful ignorance, the pitfalls of capitalism, and the morality of assisted suicide.
The new spaghetti sucks! We want authentic spaghetti!
Were you? You're gonna blow yourself up?
Yeah, but if you want to do
You clearly have a morally superior position, so...
In good old-fashioned Rick and Morty style, this one starts out with a simple dilemma which Morty has a moral objection to, only to find that his intrusiveness only muddles up the works more and further complicates things for everyone involved.
What do you say, Rick? Fly through space? Come upon
on something? Maybe I have a moral objection, stuff gets messy, and you ultimately bail us out?
Let's take it for a spin. Rick and Morty, we're back, baby!
The episode starts out with the simple problem of Morty finding out their delicious spaghetti comes from people, but not just any old people, people who have committed suicide. And then we find out that these people wanted to commit suicide so that they could provide something to the greater good of society. Which then morphs the issue into eating so many people who kill themselves to become food that now we have this global food conglomerate that's wasting away the planet, taking all joy out of life, and is also so big now that if you stop it, the entire global economy will be destroyed.
Oh, and for TV, wall-to-wall reality television, but not the good kind. It's like their whole planet was bought by Discovery.
Jesus Christ, this is depressing.
That's definitely what they're going for.
This is certainly not the funniest episode from the season. In fact, it's probably one of the least funniest, but the story is jam-packed with so much Rick and Morty goodness and sci-fi weirdness, as well as deep thematic elements that make it easier to rewatch this one, just to see what else you can catch and come to understand.
Rick introduces Morty to this totally moral gray area. Morty makes it black and white. Black and white turns out to be way more complex than just letting it be gray.
I appreciate that they portrayed both sides of the argument for assisted suicide in a fair light, but I also appreciate that they didn't pull any punches and just full on went for it.
I'm also just, Spaghetti Planet is one that I'm just in general proud of because that idea is so beyond f***ed up that, like, for me, when you stumble across one of those and you feel like only your show can do it, I feel like you gotta pursue it hard because it's like, if we don't do it, no one can. And I'm glad it didn't get us canceled.
There is so much to analyze within this episode, especially on the morality and ethics side, and I went into a pretty thorough deep dive in my review, so check that out if you want to hear more about this one. But as for now, let's move on to number 2. And so, taking the silver, my runner-up is the season finale, Fear No Mort. I went back and forth between these last two as they really are both so freaking good, not just as standalone episodes themselves, but also for what they contribute to the overall health and longevity of this show. It came down to the freaking wire, and honestly, I could go either way with these two, but as for now, I'm sticking with this current placement and leaning on my initial reactions from both episodes.
Fear.
I'm a huge horror buff, and so I am eternally grateful for this season finale, as it leans into the concept of fear, especially for Morty, as he must confront, cope with, and then conquer his deepest, darkest fear that's been holding him back this entire time. The measure of how replaceable he is to Rick, and thus his reliance upon his grandpa.
I think I figured it out, Morty. Your greatest fear is me getting Diane back and being happy again.
What? Why?
Because then I won't need you.
What kind of backhanded ass theory is that? My greatest fear is you hooking up.
You're right. We can't know for sure until I get more data.
This episode also allows us to spend some much needed and long desired time with Rick's wife Diane, giving us glimpses into their semi-canonical chemistry as a couple and how much Diane really means to Rick.
You're the only thing I can't replace.
Okay, Mr. Weepy. I'm not even real. Remember? Nothing's real. That's your jam, right?
This was a great one-off episode, and it gives me hope for more like this in the future that slowly chips away at Rick's backstory and expands the lore for our main duo. However, this episode also does a lot of work for the show in general. For one, it further strengthens Morty's character, pretty much showing us that he's conquered his biggest fear that's been holding him back all this time.
Rick, am I irreplaceable?
I mean, define irreplaceable.
That's good. Good. I'm back.
It kind of reminds me of his escapade as Roy, where he lived out a whole life as a video game character, only to re-emerge in the real world and solidify that lesson that Rick has been trying to teach him all along. Nothing truly matters.
But then, what is this?
Don't worry about it, it's not real.
God knows how long he spent within that fear hole, and God only knows if he's actually truly escaped it for good, but similar to Loki in Season 2, where he spent centuries learning all the ins and outs of theoretical physics, Morty spent a good chunk of time conquering his fear of dependency on Rick and his true value to their relationship, hopefully coming away again with the lesson that nothing truly matters.
I swear to God, if we're still climbing out of this f***ing hole 2 seasons from now.
I also find it hilarious and genius how the showrunners incorporated a built-in perma-retcon in this episode that is now at their disposal. Whether they already have intentions of when and where to use it, or are just saving it for when things need a hard reset, I think we can all agree that they will be using it at some point down the line.
God damn it! Is this gonna be a whole thing?
No wordplay, Morty.
At the end of the day, this was an awesome episode, and even while it didn't continue the overarching canon story in any huge ways, it was a great way to wrap things up thematically for this season, once again playing with that oh-so-familiar theme from the show of what is real.
Right, I'm supposed to go in there and be shocked that there's no hole or that there is a hole. What difference would it make?
Real, fake, it doesn't matter. The hole is simply a metaphor for our characters, with the episode stating that when you don't face your fears and conquer them, then they'll end up conquering you in the end. And once you realize that nothing truly matters, then there's nothing left to fear other than fear itself.
Fear.
But taking the gold, just barely for now, is Episode 5, Unmort Rickon. Talk about a satisfying conclusion to years of building arcs. This one comes out swinging, adding to the lore, building upon the confusing backstory, in particular Rick Prime's motives and Diane's disappearance across the multiverse, and delivering twists and turns that no one expected. The character development remains complex but genuine, with every conversation, or really every argument, between our intelligent characters being sophisticated, funny, and fully in line with each character's arc.
I'll explain. He's worried that it's actually your target, and he don't make credit for the kill.
Are you serious right now? You little narcissist.
Dude, literal glass house.
You think you're better than me?
Jesus, I hope so. Shouldn't you be turning yourself into a pickle?
What do you care what I do to the curve? I thought your whole gimmick was f***ing off. Certainly what made me a fan.
This episode provides so much detailed character work while still delivering high sci-fi concepts, witty and thought-provoking dialogue, and hilarious fun moments of both action and comedy relief, all within a tight 23 minutes.
How is the worst turd a pizza?
The episode fully utilizes its characters while still continuing to flesh them out, and shows us just how alike Rick Prime, Evil Morty, and Rick C-137 actually are, as they all seek out vengeance in their own, but equally petty ways.
Because using a weapon like this doesn't get you left alone, Morty. Think I want a bunch of vengeful summers coming after me?
Rick's past is blood-soaked, and his path getting here has not been easy, which begs the question, where do things go from here? And can Rick really move on after carrying out his lifelong mission of revenge?
What's your life without me? Let's find out.
Everything collides in this episode, and simply put, without the stellar replacements for Justin Roiland's voice work in Ian Cardoni and Harry Belden, it just wouldn't have worked. Everything comes together so beautifully and so excitingly, it's hard not to rank this as my number one. But that's just my list, and I would love to see yours down in the comments below. Again, I barely scratched the surface on these episodes here, so if you'd like to understand more of my thoughts, I did put out some short but high-effort deep dive reviews, which you can check out using the links in the description or in the playlist in the outro. If you enjoyed the video, let me know by hitting that like button and really stick it to the YouTube algorithm that's trying to erase my existence, I swear to God. And if you haven't subscribed yet, feel free to do so. I've got a lot of other ranking videos and video essays planned for this year, especially on some popular animations like Gravity Falls and Pixar films. But as for now, that's it from me. Thank you so much for tuning in and sticking around. I will see you all next time.